My sister abandoned her baby on my doorstep with a note that said, "He's yours now," then vanished overseas. A year later, she came back smiling like nothing happened and tried to take him back. She didn't know I documented everything. The doorbell rang at 2:47 a.m. on a Tuesday in March. I know the exact time because I checked my phone before stumbling out of bed, heart racing with that particular dread that comes from unexpected visitors in the dead of night. My apartment building had security, so whoever was downstairs had been buzzed in by another tenant or had followed someone through the entrance. I threw on a robe and padded to the door, squinting through the peephole. The hallway stretched empty in both directions, fluorescent lights humming their usual monotonous tune. Oliver's cries grew louder, more insistent. Opening the door revealed a car seat on my welcome mat. Inside it, a tiny baby who couldn't have been more than 3 weeks old was bundled in a blue blanket, with elephants printed across the fabric. His face was scrunched and red from crying little fists, waving with increasing agitation. Taped to the handle of the car seat was a piece of notebook paper, the kind with ragged edges from being torn out hastily. I recognized my sister's handwriting immediately. Victoria had always written with a leftward slant, her letters compressed, and hurried like she was constantly running late. "Maynard, he's yours now. I can't do this. His name is Oliver. Formula and diapers are in the bag underneath. Don't try to find me. V." My hands shook as I lifted the car seat and brought it inside, scanning the hallway one more time for any sign of her. Nothing. I pulled out my phone and called her number, but it went straight to a generic voicemail message. I tried again. Same result. Oliver's cries had escalated to full wails by this point. I set the car seat on my kitchen table and stared at him, my mind racing through 1,000 questions simultaneously. The bag underneath contained exactly what Victoria had promised. 3 cans of formula, a box of newborn diapers, and a single change of clothes. That was it. No medical records, no birth certificate, no instructions beyond that devastating note. I'd never changed a diaper in my life. At 32, I had deliberately structured my existence around predictable routines and careful planning. I worked as a data analyst for a pharmaceutical company, lived alone in a 1-bedroom apartment in Minneapolis, and had exactly 0 experience with infants. My younger sister, on the other hand, had always been chaos incarnate. Victoria was 27, beautiful in that effortless way some people are, and completely unreliable. She'd blown through 3 different college majors before dropping out entirely. She moved from city to city job to job relationship to relationship, leaving behind unpaid debts and broken promises wherever she landed. Our parents had given up trying to manage her years ago, settling into a weary acceptance of her choices. But this abandoning a baby. I spent the rest of that night figuring out how to prepare a bottle, while Oliver screamed himself into hiccups and exhausted whimpers. Google became my closest ally. By dawn, I'd managed to feed him, change him twice, and get him to sleep in my bed surrounded by pillows because I didn't own a crib and wasn't about to leave him alone in the car seat. When my alarm went off at 7, I called in sick to work. Then I called my mother. "Victoria left her baby on my doorstep," I said, without preamble when she answered. The silence stretched so long I thought the call had dropped. "What do you mean, left her baby?" "I mean exactly what I said. She rang my doorbell at 3 in the morning, left him in a car seat with a note saying he's mine now, and disappeared. Have you heard from her?" Mom's voice cracked. "I didn't even know she was pregnant. When did she have a baby? Where is she?" "I have no idea. Her phone goes to voicemail. She said not to look for her." Oh my God, Maynard, what are you going to do?" That question would haunt me for the next several days. I had to figure out if I was calling Child Protective Services or if I was keeping him. The rational part of my brain screamed that I should contact the authorities immediately. This was abandonment, possibly criminal. Oliver deserved better than to be treated like an unwanted package. But as I watched him sleep in my bed, his tiny chest rising and falling with each breath, I felt something shift inside me. He looked so vulnerable, so completely dependent. The thought of him entering the foster system, bouncing between strangers, while Victoria remained out there somewhere living her selfish life, made me physically sick. I spent that entire day on the phone. First, I called a family law attorney I found through an online directory. Samantha Rivera listened to my story with professional calm and laid out my options. "If you want to keep him, you need to establish legal guardianship as quickly as possible," she explained. "The fact that she left a note acknowledging she's giving him to you helps, but without proper documentation, you're in a gray area legally. We need to file for emergency custody. Can she just come back and take him? If she's the biological mother, she has parental rights unless they're terminated by a court. But abandonment is grounds for termination if we can prove it. I need you to document everything. Keep that note, take photos, record every attempt you make to contact her, save everything." I took her advice seriously. I photographed the note from every angle, uploaded copies to 3 different cloud storage services, and started a journal documenting every detail I could remember about that night. Timestamps, observations, everything. Next, I contacted my employer and negotiated working from home indefinitely. My boss, Christine, was surprisingly understanding. "Take the time you need to sort this out," she said. "We'll figure out the work logistics." The first week was brutal. Oliver had colic, which meant he cried for hours at a time for no apparent reason. I walked him around my apartment at midnight at 3 a.m. At 5 a.m., bouncing and shushing and occasionally crying myself from sheer exhaustion. I ordered everything I needed online: a crib, a changing table, more formula, bottles, tiny clothes, a baby monitor, pacifiers that he immediately rejected. My apartment transformed from a minimalist sanctuary into a chaotic mess of baby gear. I learned to function on 2-hour sleep intervals. I discovered muscles in my arms I never knew existed from carrying him constantly. My diet consisted primarily of whatever I could eat one-handed while holding a bottle. The learning curve felt impossibly steep. There were moments in those early weeks when I genuinely questioned whether I could do this. One particularly rough night, Oliver had been screaming for 3 hours straight, despite every soothing technique I'd frantically Googled. I was sitting on the bathroom floor at 4 a.m, both of us crying, when my neighbor Mrs. Kowalski knocked on my door. She was a grandmother in her 70s who'd lived in the building for decades. I opened the door, probably looking completely unhinged, and she took one look at us before gently taking Oliver from my arms. "Go take a shower," she ordered. "A hot one. Take your time." "I can't just leave him with you." "I don't. I raised 4 children and helped with 7 grandchildren. He'll be fine for 20 minutes. Go." Standing under the hot water, finally alone for the first time in days, I broke down completely. But when I emerged clean and slightly more human Mrs., Kowalski had Oliver calm and drowsy, rocking him with practiced ease. Colic, she diagnosed immediately. My second son had it. "Nobody tells you how hard this part is, especially alone. You're doing better than you think, sweetheart." That small act of kindness kept me going. She started checking in regularly, teaching me tricks she'd learned over decades of parenting. How to swaddle properly. The exact angle to hold a bottle to prevent gas. Which baby sounds actually meant distress versus simple fussing. Around week 3, I discovered something that transformed everything. Oliver loved being worn in a baby carrier. The closeness, the movement, the sound of my heartbeat all soothed him instantly. I started wearing him for hours at a time, doing household chores, and working on my laptop with him strapped to my chest, his little head tucked under my chin. Those weeks also revealed exactly how my life would change. My friend Rachel invited me to her birthday dinner at a downtown restaurant. I explained I couldn't find a babysitter on such short notice, and besides, Oliver was too young to leave with a stranger. "Just bring him," she suggested brightly. "Babies sleep through anything, right?" I tried. Oliver screamed through the appetizers, spit up on my dress during the main course, and needed a diaper change that the restaurant wasn't equipped to handle. I ended up in my car, changing him on the back seat, while the dinner continued without me. By the time I got him settled, I was too exhausted and embarrassed to go back inside. Rachel texted later, "That was rough. Maybe next time get a sitter." The disconnect was jarring. People who didn't have children genuinely couldn't comprehend that just get a sitter wasn't a magic solution. Oliver was barely a month old. I couldn't hand him over to a teenager from a babysitting app. He was completely dependent on me for everything. And the weight of that responsibility was both terrifying and sacred. But there were also unexpected joys. Around 6 weeks, Oliver gave me his first real smile. Not just gas, but an actual response to my presence. It happened during a diaper change when I was making silly faces to distract him. His whole face lit up, eyes crinkling, and something in my chest cracked open. Every developmental milestone felt monumental because I was experiencing them alone with no one to share the moment. When he rolled from his back to his tummy at 4.5 months, I called my mom, immediately breathless with excitement. When he started reaching for toys, I took videos and watched them, repeatedly marveling at his growing coordination. I developed a routine that worked for us. Morning feeding at 6, followed by tummy time while I drank coffee. Mid-morning nap when I'd frantically answer work emails. Afternoon walk around the neighborhood in the stroller. Evening bath that became his favorite part of the day, splashing and giggling while I narrated everything I was doing. Bedtime at 7:30. Then the blessed quiet hours when I'd catch up on work, clean the apartment, or simply collapse on the couch in exhausted silence. My coworkers adapted to my new reality. Conference calls included my apologies when Oliver made noise in the background. Project deadlines got extended when he went through sleep regressions. Christine, my boss, became unexpectedly supportive, sharing stories about her own children and assuring me that the company valued my work regardless of the chaos in my personal life. Financial stress was constant. Formula alone cost nearly $300 a month. Diapers, wipes, clothing outgrown in weeks, medical copays, childcare supplies. The expenses piled up relentlessly. I'd always been comfortable on my analyst salary, but supporting two people on one income meant my savings account steadily dwindled. I applied for government assistance and was denied because I made just slightly too much to qualify. The irony stung. I was responsible enough to take in an abandoned baby, but apparently too financially stable to deserve help feeding him. I started buying generic brands, skipping luxuries I'd once taken for granted, budgeting down to the dollar. During this time, I kept trying to reach Victoria. Every day, multiple times a day, I called her phone. I sent text messages that went undelivered. I messaged her on social media, but her account showed no recent activity. She'd vanished completely. Our parents came to visit that first weekend. Dad held Oliver awkwardly, looking shell-shocked while Mom cried and apologized like this was somehow her fault. "We failed her," Mom said. "We must have failed her so badly for her to do something like this." "You didn't fail anyone," I said firmly. Victoria made her choices. She's 27 years old. She knows right from wrong. Dad shook his head slowly. "I keep thinking about when she was little. She was such a sweet kid. What happened?" I didn't have an answer for that. None of us did. Samantha moved quickly on the legal front. Within 2 weeks, we had a court date for emergency custody. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s named Judge Hartley, reviewed the evidence. I compiled the note, photographs, my journal entries, phone records, showing my attempts to contact Victoria, and testimony from my parents confirming they had no idea where she was. "This is highly irregular," Judge Hartley said, peering over her reading glasses at me, "but given the circumstances and the child's need for stability, I'm granting temporary emergency custody to Miss Maynard Martinez for a period of 6 months, at which point we'll review the situation. During this time, efforts will be made to locate the biological mother." I left the courthouse with official papers declaring me Oliver's legal guardian. The relief was overwhelming. He was safe. He was mine, at least for now. The months that followed established a new normal. Oliver grew from a colicky newborn into a chubby, smiling baby who laughed at peekaboo and grabbed at everything within reach. By the time I'd gotten comfortable with diaper changes, feeding schedules, and distinguishing between his different cries, the 6-month mark was approaching fast. Work accommodated my situation better than I'd hoped. I attended meetings with Oliver and a bouncer next to my desk, my camera angled so colleagues couldn't see the chaos of my apartment behind me. I submitted reports during naps and finished projects at 11 p.m. after his last feeding. My social life evaporated, but I didn't care. Friends without children couldn't understand why I couldn't just get a babysitter and come out for drinks. The few times I tried to explain how completely a baby consumes your existence, I saw their eyes glaze over with polite disinterest. But there were moments of pure joy that made everything worthwhile. Oliver's first laugh, triggered by me making ridiculous faces while we waited for his bottle to warm. The way he'd grip my finger with his entire fist, holding on like I was his anchor to the world. How he'd snuggle into my shoulder when he was sleepy, his breath warm against my neck. I took photos of everything, not just the cute moments, but the mundane ones too. Receipts for formula and diapers, screenshots of my bank statements showing expenses, records of pediatrician appointments, notes about his sleep schedule, his feeding times when he started rolling over when he cut his first tooth. Samantha had told me to document everything, and I took that instruction to heart. At his 6-month checkup, Dr. Harrison, our pediatrician, noted that Oliver was thriving. "He's in the 75th percentile for weight and height," she said, smiling. "Whatever you're doing, keep it up." "His mother abandoned him," I said quietly, surprising myself. I usually avoided mentioning Victoria to anyone outside immediate family. Dr. Harrison's expression softened. "Well, he's lucky to have you. Not every child in that situation ends up somewhere so clearly loved." The 6-month review hearing approached, and there was still no sign of Victoria. Samantha filed for termination of parental rights based on abandonment and my petition to adopt Oliver. The process would take time, she warned, but given the circumstances, she was optimistic. Judge Hartley extended my guardianship for another 6 months and approved moving forward with the adoption proceedings. If the biological mother doesn't surface and contest this within the next year, I see no reason why this adoption won't be finalized, she told me. I allowed myself to hope. Maybe Victoria was truly gone for good. Maybe Oliver would officially become my son without any further complications. He was 11 months old when I heard the doorbell ring. On a Saturday afternoon, Oliver was napping, and I was folding laundry in the living room, half watching a home renovation show on mute. I checked the video intercom, expecting a package delivery. Instead, I saw Victoria's face on the screen. She looked tanned and relaxed, wearing a sundress and oversized sunglasses, her hair longer than I remembered it. She was smiling at the camera like she was posing for a casual photo. My blood turned to ice. I stood there for a solid 30 seconds, just staring at her image on the screen. She rang the bell again, waving at the camera cheerfully like she was stopping by for a normal visit, like the last year hadn't happened. Every instinct screamed at me not to let her in, but I needed to know what she wanted. I needed to hear what possible justification she could offer for what she'd done. I pressed the button to unlock the building entrance and opened my apartment door, leaving the chain lock engaged. She appeared in the hallway minutes later, pulling a designer suitcase behind her, still wearing that insufferable smile. Maynard, God, it's so good to see you. She moved in for a hug, but the chain lock kept her at arm's length. Her smile faltered slightly. Can I come in? Why are you here? My voice came out flat, emotionless. To see my baby, obviously. I've missed him so much. She said it like it was the most natural thing in the world, like she'd been away on a business trip instead of abandoning her infant son for nearly a year. Your baby. Yes, Oliver. Is he here? I can't wait to see how big he's gotten. I felt rage building in my chest, hot and suffocating. You left him on my doorstep at 3 a.m. with a note saying he was mine. You disappeared without a trace, and now you just show up expecting what exactly? Victoria's smile turned placating. I know. I handled it badly, but I was overwhelmed. Maynard. I was postpartum and depressed, and I just needed some time to get my head together. Sometime it's been almost a year. Well, I'm better now. I got help. I worked through everything, and now I'm ready to be his mom. She tried to peer past me into the apartment. Can I see him, please? No. The smile disappeared completely. What do you mean, no? He's my son. You gave up that right when you abandoned him. I have legal custody, Victoria. You can't just waltz back in and play mommy whenever it's convenient for you. Her eyes narrowed, and I saw a flash of the temper she'd always had. Legal custody. You had no right to do that. I left him with you for temporary care, not so you could steal him from me. Temporary care requires communication. You literally told me not to look for you. You changed your number. You disappeared off the face of the earth. I was in Thailand. I needed to find myself to heal. You have no idea how hard pregnancy and childbirth were for me. Hard for you. You weren't the one who spent the last year raising him. She scoffed. Oh, please. You've probably loved every minute of it. You always wanted kids. I basically gave you a gift. The audacity of that statement left me momentarily speechless. A gift? You abandoned your child. That's not a gift, Victoria. That's a crime. Don't be so dramatic. I knew he'd be safe with you. That's why I left him there. And now I'm back and I want him. So let me in or I'll call the police. Go ahead, I said, surprising both of us with my calm. Call them. I'd love to have a police report documenting you showing up after abandoning your infant son for 11 months. Uncertainty flickered across her face. You can't keep me from my own child. Actually, I can. I'm his legal guardian. You have no custody rights, and I have an appointment with my lawyer Monday morning to ensure you never get any. This is insane, her voice rose sharply. Mom and Dad will never forgive you for keeping their grandson from me. Mom and Dad know exactly what you did. They've been here helping me take care of him. Where were you? She opened her mouth, closed it, then tried a different tactic. Her expression softened, tears pooling in her eyes. Maynard, please. I made mistakes. I was scared and alone, and I didn't know what to do. But I'm his mother. You can't replace that. He needs me. He needed you when you left him crying on my doorstep at 3 a.m. He needed you when he had colic and screamed for hours. He needed you for his first smile, his first laugh, his first tooth. Where were you for any of that? You're being cruel. I'm being honest. Oliver deserves better than someone who treats him like an accessory they can pick up and put down whenever they feel like it. Oliver chose that moment to start crying from the bedroom. Victoria's face lit up. That's him. Let me see him, Maynard, just for a minute. Absolutely not. Leave my building, Victoria. If you want any kind of contact with Oliver, it goes through my lawyer. Otherwise, stay away from us. This isn't over, she hissed, her tears evaporating instantly. He's my son and I will get him back. You can't just steal someone's baby and expect there to be no consequences. I closed the door in her face and engaged all 3 locks, then leaned against it, shaking. Oliver's cries intensified. I forced myself to breathe to calm down before going to him. He needed me stable, not rattled. He was standing in his crib, face red and tears-streaked, reaching for me. I picked him up and held him close, inhaling the baby shampoo scent of his hair. "It's okay, sweetheart, you're safe. I've got you." The second he was in my arms, he calmed down. That trust, that immediate comfort he found with me, had been earned through countless sleepless nights and exhausting days. Victoria thought she could just show up and claim it. Absolutely not. I called Samantha immediately, even though it was Saturday. She answered on the 3rd ring. "Victoria showed up at my door," I said without greeting. "Tell me everything." I recounted the conversation while Oliver played with my hair, oblivious to the threat his biological mother posed to our life together. Samantha listened without interrupting her breathing, the only sound besides Oliver's babbling. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. "This actually works in our favor." "How?" "Her showing up after nearly a year, acting entitled, making demands, with no acknowledgement of the harm she caused, or any evidence of changed circumstances. This supports our abandonment case." "Did you record the conversation?" "No, but the building has security cameras at the entrance." "Perfect. I'll request that footage. In the meantime, document what she said, everything you remember. If she contacts you again, do not engage. Tell her all communication must go through me, then end the conversation. And Maynard, don't answer the door for her again." Over the next week, Victoria tried everything. She called my phone repeatedly until I blocked her number. She showed up at my building twice more, but I refused to buzz her in and instructed the building manager not to let her access without my explicit permission. She sent lengthy text messages from new numbers, alternating between pleading and threatening. I saved everything. Screenshots, voicemails, even the flowers she had delivered with a card that read, "Please let me meet my son. I'm begging you." She contacted our parents, crying about how I was keeping her from Oliver. Mom called me clearly torn. She says she made a mistake, and she's sorry, Mom said carefully. "Shouldn't we give her a chance to make amends?" "She had a chance," I replied. She had dozens of chances. Every single day for 11 months was a chance to come back to call to show even the slightest bit of responsibility. Instead, she was living in Thailand, finding herself. "I know, honey, but she's still my daughter and he's still her son." "And I'm your daughter too," I said. "I'm the one who's been up at 3 a.m. for a year. I'm the one who rearranged my entire life for him. I'm the one he reaches for when he's scared or hurt. That has to count for something." Dad got on the line. "It counts for everything, Maynard," he said. "Your mother and I support you completely. Victoria needs to understand there are consequences to her actions." The relief I felt hearing those words nearly brought me to tears. "Thank you. We've told her we won't help her with this," Dad continued. "We love her, but what she did was unforgivable. Oliver is your son now in every way that matters." Victoria must have realized she wasn't getting anywhere through personal appeals because she hired a lawyer. 2 weeks after her initial appearance at my door, Samantha called to inform me that Victoria had filed for emergency custody, claiming I had taken Oliver illegally and was refusing to return him to his rightful mother. "She's arguing that she left him with you for temporary care during a mental health crisis, and that you've taken advantage of her vulnerable state to steal her child," Samantha explained. "It's complete nonsense, and the judge is going to see right through it. But we need to be prepared." The court date was set for 3 weeks out. During that time, Samantha assembled our case with military precision. We had the original note in Victoria's handwriting stating he was mine. We had 11 months of documented proof that I'd been Oliver's sole caregiver, medical records receipts, photos, my detailed journal entries, testimony from Dr. Harrison's statements from my parents. We also had evidence of Victoria's complete absence phone records, showing zero contact bank statements, proving she hadn't contributed financially, social media posts, showing her living it up in Southeast Asia while I was dealing with colic and diaper blowouts. Most damning of all were the screenshots of her recent messages where she'd admitted she needed time to find herself and had been overwhelmed. No mention of any mental health treatment. No evidence she'd sought professional help. Just a year of partying on beaches while her infant son was being raised by someone else. The hearing was held on a cloudy Tuesday morning in early April. I wore a conservative navy dress and minimal makeup, looking every inch the responsible guardian I'd become. Oliver sat in a stroller beside me in the courtroom, chewing on a teething ring, completely oblivious to the proceedings that would determine his future. Victoria arrived looking dramatically different from her doorstep appearance. She'd clearly been coached by her lawyer, wearing a modest black suit with her hair pulled back, makeup understated. She looked somber and repentant, the picture of a reformed mother seeking redemption. Her lawyer, a middle-aged man named Gregory Hoffman, painted a sympathetic picture of a young woman who'd experienced severe postpartum depression and had made a desperate decision during a mental health crisis. He argued that Victoria had been too ill to properly communicate, but had trusted her sister to care for Oliver temporarily. Now that she'd recovered, she deserved the chance to be the mother she'd always wanted to be. My client made a mistake, Hoffman said earnestly, but mistakes made during severe mental illness shouldn't permanently strip a woman of her parental rights. She's sought treatment, she's better, and she's ready to take on her responsibilities as a mother. Judge Hartley listened impassively, then turned to Samantha. Miss Rivera. Samantha stood, and I felt a surge of gratitude for her composure. Your Honor, I'd like to enter into evidence the note Miss Victoria Martinez left with a child on March 15th of last year. She provided copies to the judge and to Hoffman. Judge Hartley read it silently, her expression unchanging. He's yours now, Samantha quoted. Not please watch him for a while, or I need help. The language is clear and unambiguous. This was abandonment, not a request for temporary assistance. Furthermore, Samantha continued. Miss Victoria Martinez instructed her sister not to try to find her, and then cut off all communication for 11 months. My client was not in her right mind, Hoffman interjected. If that's true, where is the evidence of mental health treatment? Samantha shot back. Where are the medical records, the prescriptions, the therapy notes? Because what we have instead are social media posts showing Miss Victoria Martinez enjoying an extended vacation in Thailand. She submitted printouts of Victoria's Instagram and Facebook posts, which I had painstakingly compiled. Photos of Victoria on beaches, at temple festivals, rock climbing, at beach clubs, all posted publicly, many of them time-stamped and geotagged. The evidence was irrefutable. Hoffman tried to argue that Victoria had needed to get away, to heal, that traditional therapy hadn't worked for her, that she'd found peace through travel and self-reflection. Judge Hartley's expression grew increasingly skeptical with each claim. Then Samantha called me to the stand. I explained the night Oliver arrived on my doorstep, in careful detail the time the contents of the bag, my attempts to contact Victoria, my decision to seek legal guardianship when it became clear she wasn't coming back. I talked about the sleepless nights, the pediatrician visits, the way I'd restructured my entire life around Oliver's needs. Do you love him? Samantha asked. More than anything, I answered honestly. He's my son in every way that matters. Has Miss Victoria Martinez provided any financial support for Oliver's care during the past 11 months? None whatsoever. I've covered every expense. Has she sent birthday cards, gifts, called to check on him? Nothing until she showed up at my door 3 weeks ago demanding him back. When Hoffman cross-examined me, he tried to make it sound like I'd taken advantage of my sister's vulnerability, that I'd rushed to establish legal guardianship to cut Victoria out. Isn't it true you immediately sought to adopt Oliver? I sought emergency custody after his mother abandoned him. The adoption proceedings didn't begin until after the 6-month review, when Victoria still hadn't made any attempt to contact us. You kept him from his mother. His mother told me not to look for her and then disappeared for a year. I've kept him safe, fed, loved, and healthy. That's not keeping him from anyone. That's parenting. The turning point came when Judge Hartley asked Victoria to take the stand. Hoffman had clearly prepared her, but under questioning, the facade cracked. Why didn't you call your sister during those 11 months, Judge Hartley asked. I needed space to heal, Victoria said, her voice small. Space from the baby, or space from your responsibilities, from the pressure, from feeling like I was failing. So instead of seeking help from family medical professionals or support groups, you went to Thailand for a year. I needed to find peace. I was depressed. Were you diagnosed with postpartum depression by a medical professional? Victoria hesitated. I self-diagnosed based on what I was feeling. Did you seek treatment from a doctor or therapist? I know, but I knew what I was experiencing. You knew you were experiencing postpartum depression, severe enough to justify abandoning your infant, but not severe enough to seek medical intervention. I handled it my own way. Judge Hartley's expression hardened. By leaving your newborn son on a doorstep at 3 a.m. with a note and disappearing to another continent. Victoria's eyes filled with tears. I made a mistake, but I'm better now. I want to be his mother. What changed between March of last year and now that makes you feel capable of parenting? I've had time to process everything, to heal emotionally, to prepare myself. Have you secured housing appropriate for a child? Not yet, but I'm working on it. Employment. I'm looking. Do you have any understanding of Oliver's current routine? His likes and dislikes, his medical history? Victoria glanced at me desperately. I've been kept from all that information. You kept yourself from it, Judge Hartley said sharply. For 11 months, you made no attempt to obtain that information or participate in your son's life. That was your choice, Miss Martinez. The hearing lasted 4 hours. By the end, Hoffman looked defeated, and Victoria was openly crying. Judge Hartley called for a 30-minute recess before rendering her decision. I spent that time in the hallway with Oliver, who'd grown fussy from being cooped up. I walked him back and forth, humming softly, trying to project a calm I didn't feel. Samantha stood nearby, giving me an encouraging smile. It's going well, she said quietly. It doesn't feel like it. What if she believes Victoria's mental health excuse? She doesn't. Trust me, I've been doing this for 15 years. Judge Hartley sees through it. When we reconvened, the courtroom felt smaller somehow, the air heavier. Judge Hartley looked tired but resolute. I've presided over many difficult cases, she began, but few have presented such a clear disparity between a biological parent's rights and a child's best interests. Miss Victoria Martinez, I don't doubt that you experienced difficulties after Oliver's birth, Judge Hartley continued. Parenthood is challenging under the best circumstances, and I acknowledge that you may have been struggling. However, the appropriate response to those struggles is not abandonment. It's seeking help from family friends, medical professionals, or support services. You chose instead to leave the country and pursue your own healing, while entrusting Oliver to your sister without proper communication or planning. Victoria sat frozen in her seat, tears streaming down her face. Miss Maynard Martinez has provided a stable, loving home for this child for the past 11 months. She has met every physical, emotional, and developmental need. She has done everything required of a parent despite having no obligation to do so. The bond between them is evident, and disrupting that bond now would cause significant harm to Oliver. My hands clenched together so tightly my knuckles went white. Therefore, I am terminating Miss Victoria Martinez's parental rights based on abandonment and willful failure to provide support. Miss Maynard Martinez's petition for adoption is approved, pending the completion of home studies and background checks, which I have no reason to believe will present any issues. Congratulations, Miss Martinez. You're going to be a mother. The relief that washed over me was so intense, I actually felt dizzy. Samantha squeezed my shoulder, while Hoffman tried to console a sobbing Victoria. It was over. Oliver was legally, officially, permanently mine. Victoria left the courtroom without looking at me, supported by Hoffman, who was already discussing appeals. But I knew that was an empty threat. The evidence had been overwhelming. No appeals court was going to overturn that decision. The formal adoption was finalized 3 months later after the required home study and background checks. Judge Hartley herself presided over the ceremony, smiling as she signed the papers that made Oliver legally my son. I'm pleased to see this case reach such a positive conclusion, she told me afterward. That little boy is very lucky to have you. I'm the lucky one, I replied, meaning it completely. Oliver was 16 months old by then, walking with adorable wobbling steps and saying "Mama" clear as day. My mama. There was no confusion in his mind about who his mother was. Victoria made one last attempt to see him about 6 months after the adoption was finalized. She showed up at the park where I regularly took Oliver to play, approaching us while he was going down the slide. He's gotten so big, she said softly, standing a careful distance away. I positioned myself between her and Oliver. You need to leave. I just want to see him. I'm not trying to cause problems. You lost the right to see him. You lost every right when you abandoned him. I know I messed up. I know I can't fix it, but he's still part of me. Maynard, can't you understand that? I picked Oliver up as he ran over to me, and he wrapped his arms around my neck, eyeing Victoria with the wariness toddlers have for strangers. That look told me everything I needed to know. He didn't recognize her. She was nothing to him. He's not part of you, I said quietly. He's part of me. I'm the one who earned that through every sleepless night, every fever, every milestone. Biology doesn't make you a mother. Being there does. I'll always regret what I did. Good. You should. But your regret doesn't entitle you to anything. Now leave us alone, or I'll file for a restraining order. She left without another word. I never saw her again. Oliver is 4 now. He calls me Mama without any qualifiers or confusion. He doesn't know yet that I'm not his biological mother, though I plan to tell him when he's old enough to understand. He deserves to know his story, but it will be his story, not hers. The story of how he came to me on a cold March night and changed my life forever. The documentation I kept so meticulously sits in a fireproof safe in my closet. The note, the photos, the journal entries, all of it. Not because I think Victoria will ever challenge the adoption again, but because someday Oliver might have questions. When he does, I'll have answers backed up by evidence rather than emotion. People sometimes ask if I'm angry at Victoria for what she did. The truth is more complicated than simple anger. I'm grateful that her inability to parent gave me the greatest gift of my life. I'm furious that she put Oliver through the trauma of abandonment. I'm sad for what she lost, even though she threw it away willingly. Mostly, though, I'm at peace. Oliver is happy, healthy, and loved beyond measure. He has grandparents who dote on him, a mother who would move mountains for him, and a future full of possibility. Victoria gave birth to him, but I gave him a life worth living. That makes me his real mother in every way that counts. Last week, Oliver brought home a drawing from preschool. It showed 2 stick figures, one tall and one small, holding hands under a yellow sun. "That's you and me, Mama," he explained proudly. I hung it on the refrigerator next to dozens of other art masterpieces, my heart so full it ached. This is what Victoria walked away from. This is what she'll never have. And this is what I'll protect for the rest of my